Hi everybody, I'm Bia, and welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who don't know, Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens to learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes more sense to us and is more relatable to us as teenagers in today's society. Because oftentimes the literature that we read, the Spiritist literature that we read, or hearing adults speak, and even in a different language, could be confusing for us to understand, or the language may be language that we don't really use anymore. So hopefully we can simplify it, and together we can go through things and find the meaning of it, and find an understanding, and put it into practice in our daily lives. As we've been reading through the Spirit's book together, we've come to the part where we're talking about the moral laws of what we have to do to reach that state of perfection that we're always talking about, to reach the state of perfection such as where Jesus is and other enlightened spirits. We're all going to get there one day, but how do we get there? By following these moral laws, these natural laws that God created for us. So we've been going through some of them, and this week, continuing on from last week, we're on the law of freedom. And in the law of freedom, we're on the section freedom of conscience. So just to clarify, last week there was a section about freedom of thought, of us thinking. But freedom of conscience, what we're talking about is, it's kind of the same thing as how you're thinking, but it's like that voice you hear in your head that's guiding you, that's telling you to do certain things. So it's that voice inside your head, or like that feeling, oh, this is a good thing to do, or oh, this is a bad thing to do. So it's that feeling rather than just what you're thinking. So we'll pick up where we left off last week, which is question 838. Is every belief respectable, even when notoriously wrong-headed? So there's the thing, so every belief, every religion, or sometimes it's not big enough. Even Spiritism, as we know, when we fill out surveys, Spiritism in the United States isn't big enough for it to be on those surveys, and you have to click that you have a different belief, a different religion. So every belief, is it respectable? Can we respect all? And even though we think that, okay, that religion is, or that belief is so wrong, but is it still respectable? And the Spirits answered, every belief is respectable when it is sincere and leads to the practice of good. Reproachable beliefs are those that lead to evil. So yes, even though a belief may be different from ours, if they're sincere and they're trying to do the good with their belief, then that's okay, that's respectable. It doesn't matter that it might seem a little wrong to us, but if they're trying to do the good and it's coming from their heart, then that's respectable for those to believe, because we can't expect everyone to believe the same way that we do, and we can't impose people. We can't tell them, oh, here, you think like that, no, you should think like this, and force them. We can't force them to think like us either, or believe like us. So if they're trying to do the good with their belief, then that's what counts, and if it's sincere, if it's coming from their heart, and they're trying to practice the good, then that belief is respectable. But there are those who are leading towards evil, and that, of course, it's not really respectable. We want to help fix those people that, even in their own belief, we want them to start leading to the good, not towards evil. Question 839. Are we blameworthy when we use our own beliefs to scandalize someone who does not think like us? So here it's talking about, so sometimes we judge people, really. We judge people based on their beliefs, because of their belief, they did something. But because of our beliefs, we think that what they did was completely wrong or something. Let's say, for example, there are some beliefs, some cultures that don't eat red meat or don't eat meat at all. And then for us, let's say they see us eating meat, and they think, oh my goodness, how could those people be eating meat? Because we don't think like them, we eat meat and they don't. So right there, it's like, and that could be us. That could be us too. So what if there's something that another person does that we're like, oh, why don't you do that? We do that. And then you get confused. Or some people who don't pray, let's say. we pray, so we're like, how come that person doesn't pray? They should just pray. So it's just because we think that we do it, that when someone else doesn't do it, we're like, we kind of judge them. So is it our fault when we judge these people? And the spirits answered, it shows a lack of charity and goes against freedom of thought. So yeah, we are to blame when that happens, because it shows a lack of charity. Just because that person believes differently than us doesn't mean that we have to force our beliefs on them. And maybe they just haven't learned it yet. They haven't been exposed to the same things we have. Especially something like Spiritism. We know that there's not that many of us compared to other religions who believe in this or who study it. And it might not be that they don't think Spiritism is bad or anything against it, but they might not even know about Spiritism to even follow any sorts of things. So we have to keep in mind that these people might not know, or might not be ready to learn that information. And we have to show charity towards them and help one another and be kind to one another. And again, it goes against their freedom of thought, because we do have the freedom to think and believe whatever we want. Question 840. Does it go against freedom of conscience to obstruct beliefs that might disturb society? So, does it go against your freedom of conscience, your freedom to know what's right and wrong and to do what's right and wrong based on your own thoughts and your conscience? And so it's saying, so to obstruct a belief that might disturb society. So say there is something that is not a good thing to think. That's not a good thing to believe. So to kind of stop those people from believing that, would that be against your freedom to believe whatever you want? And the spirits answered, acts may be restrained, but inner belief is inaccessible. So what they're saying is that if there's some belief that is coming that people are like, ooh, that belief might not really be good for our society, just because we do some, and think about in society, if we do a war to keep those people out, or do some law to keep those kind of people out, or segregate those people, just because we're restraining those people doesn't mean that thought's going away. They still have the belief, they still have the thought. So that's their inner thought, and we can't change their inner thought. People might want to keep them away or try and physically change their thoughts, but they're not changing their thoughts. Their thoughts are still the same. We can't change the way other people think. We can help them and show them what we think, and if they want to believe what we believe, then that's great, but we can't force anyone to believe or think anyway. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in, and he says, restraining the external acts of a belief when such acts cause harm to others does not go against freedom of conscience, for such repression leaves to the belief its entire freedom. So if a belief is hurting people or it has a really negative effect, think about in the time of Adolf Hitler. His belief was that there were some people that were perfect, that's what people should be like, and everyone else shouldn't exist. So he kind of went, to be brute, he kind of went like exterminating these people, getting rid of all these people that didn't fit his category, and he kind of manipulated people to believe the same way he does. So this is something that, okay, we have to restrain this. We have to stop this. Even though it's something they believe, we have to stop this because it's causing harm to other people. So in that case, then, no, we're not restraining freedom of conscience because it is causing harm to other people and it should be stopped. So, yeah, it might not change the way they believe, but that's still something that we need to interfere in and restrain and stop. So it's not like, oh, everyone can believe what they believe and do whatever they want. No, we have to still make sure we're respectful and kind to others and not hurting other people. And then in that case, it would be fine to think something else. Question 841. Out of respect for freedom of conscience, should we allow the propagation of harmful doctrines, or may we, without going against such freedom, seek to lead back on the path of truth those who have led astray by erroneous principles? So again, so this is kind of the same situation that we're talking about. So out of respect for freedom of conscience, when there's these harmful doctrines that are hurting people, like Adolf Hitler's doctrine, can we stop it? Or can we somehow lead these people back to believing something else? So Adolf Hitler kind of got people to believe what he was thinking, but can we somehow, not violently, but can we somehow lead those people back onto a good path? And the spirits answered, certainly, you may and you should, but to follow the example of Jesus, you may teach by gentleness and persuasion, and not by force, since that would be worse than the belief of the one who you desire to convince. If there is something that ought to be imposed, it is goodness and fraternity, but we do not believe the means for doing so is violent. Conviction cannot be forcefully imposed. So here they're saying that yes, like those, like the Nazis or the people who were believing that what he was doing was right, we can't force them. We can't get them and force them and say, hey, you can't do this, you have to believe this, and be mean to them and all that stuff. No. But we can teach by gentleness and by persuasion. We can teach them just like Jesus did. Jesus didn't come to say, oh, hey, you have to believe what I believe in and that's it. No, he came and he said, he came and he taught a lesson and he showed people, oh, this is being kind and this is this. And he just did it by example. And from there, people were like, wow, I want to do the same thing. I also want to believe that. So that's the way that we have to help people. That's the way that we can share Spiritism to other people. So we can say, oh, well, you can do something. And someone say, oh, where'd you learn that? You can say, oh, in the Spiritist doctrine. And you can show them. But you don't just show up and say, here's this book. You have to read it right now and believe in everything that's in it. Even for us, sometimes some concepts are hard to understand. So we need to follow Jesus' example and teach by gentleness and by persuade and by being kind and showing by example and saying, oh, here, this is what I've learned, and that's okay if you don't believe it, but this is just what I believe in, and I just wanted to share that with you. Or just show something without like labeling it as Spiritist. So there's many ways that we can share our beliefs without forcing it on someone or making them. Because the minute you start forcing them, hey, you have to believe this, they'll get defensive and they won't want to believe it. So, and of course, nonviolence. So, of course, in the time of Adolf Hitler, it was they kind of had to do like a war to stop that. But say it's someone's belief, then we shouldn't violently impose something on that. We can't go and violently shake them until they believe it. So we believe in nonviolence. Like Martin Luther King Jr., he believed in equality for everyone. But he did not do this, he didn't do it violently. He peacefully and taught by example how they should be equal. And he talked so people treated him with respect. If he just went there violently, nothing would have gotten done. So we must be gentle when we want to help people or share our knowledge with them. And don't expect them to completely agree with it right at the beginning, but they'll get there eventually. Question 842. Since all doctrines claim to be the sole expression of the truth, by what sign can we recognize which one actually has the right to be presented as such? So what they're saying here is, okay, every religion, every belief thinks that their way is the right way. Thinks that, okay, this is how it is, and everyone else is kind of wrong. Think about it, even Spiritists too. We think, okay, we know this, but all the other religions, they're kind of a little bit off here and there. So all doctrines claim that they have the truth. So how are we going to know which one actually is the truth? And I know we want to say Spiritism is, but what about those people who think another belief is, and another belief, and another belief? How are we going to know which one is the actual right one? And the spirits answered, it will be the one that produces the fewest hypocrites and the greatest number of moral individuals, which means they practice the law of love and charity in its greatest purity and widest application. By this sign you will recognize which doctrine is good, because those doctrines that result in sowing disunion and establishing divisions among God's children can only be erroneous and harmful. So we're going to figure out which one is like the best belief, the best doctrine, by which one is producing the most good. Which people are coming, how many people are coming out of that as moral individuals and helping one another, and the love and charity that's being produced by that belief. Basically, the one that has the most love and charity, the practice of love and charity, that's the one with the greatest purity and the widest application, and that's the one we should be following. And because if a doctrine is breaking people up or dividing people or harming people, then no, we're not practicing love and charity. So the one that's practicing love and charity, that's the one that is the one that we should all be following. And now we're on to the next section in this chapter, still about the law of freedom, and this one's about free will. So this is our freedom to basically do whatever we want. So question 843. Do humans act with free will? The spirits answered, since they have freedom of thought, they have freedom of action. Without free will, human beings would be machines. So yes, we do have free will, meaning that we have freedom to think whatever we want, and we have freedom to act however we want. Of course, we know that there's some things that are going to have consequences, and we can't do that. Say even in school, we have the freedom to do whatever we want, but we know, okay, I have to do my homework or else I'm going to get in trouble. I have to go to class or else I'm going to get in trouble. So we know there's things that we have to follow, but theoretically, you can do whatever you want. But it doesn't mean that doing whatever you want is the right thing. But we do have that power to do that. And if we weren't, then we would just be machines if we were just programmed to all do the same thing. Question 844. Do people enjoy free will from the moment of birth? So is it since birth you have free will? And the spirits answered, they have the freedom to act from the moment they have a will to act. During the first phases of life, freedom is almost non-existent. It develops and changes its objectives as the faculties develop. Since the thoughts of children are in proportion to the needs of their age, they apply their free will to things that are necessary for them. So basically what they're saying is, okay, I guess we kind of have free will when we're born, but it's kind of when we're born, we don't even have that much thought going through our heads to be able to want to act upon that. So as we go developing and growing, we start getting more freedom of thought. We're thinking our own things, and then we can start acting our own ways. And we see that with little children. Babies, they just kind of think and want the necessities. They just want to be changed, to sleep, to eat. So they just want these necessities, and they can't really act on any of that. But then as they go developing, then they start thinking, oh, I want to eat, and they maybe go over to the fridge, and they start pulling at the door. So as we go developing, we can have this freedom of free will more, this freedom of action more as we go developing. Question 845. Aren't the instinctive predispositions that individuals bring at birth an obstacle to the exercise of their free will? So isn't it saying that the things that we are given as individuals at birth, isn't this, or like our instincts that we have, isn't that an exercise of free will? So even our instincts to like we said, to be changed or to eat or to sleep, aren't these still our free will of, oh, I'm tired now, so I'm gonna sleep? Because we know babies just sleep when they want or eat when they want. And the spirits answered, instinctive predispositions arise from those of the spirit before its incarnation. Depending on how much the spirit has evolved, these predispositions can incite the individual to reprehensible acts, in which he or she will be aided by spirits who sympathize with such dispositions. However, there is no irresistible incitement if the individual has the will to resist. Remember, where there is a will, there is a way. So what they're saying here is that our instinctive predispositions of things that we have kind of just within us, our instincts to do things, they arise from the spirit before the incarnation. So our past lives and what we did in the spirit world, and that's where our instincts come. Our instincts to maybe go to an instrument, maybe because we played that instrument before, like we see child prodigies, or to learn a specific thing. So our things that these instincts that we have, they come from like these memories, not memories, but memories in the back of our head that we have of our spirit before. So that's how what we're predisposed to the things that already happened to us, and we already have that with us. But like they said here, where there's a will, there's a way. So if this person wants to do something and act on something, there's a way for them to do it, and they will find a way to do it. And of course, that goes back to how evolved the spirit is. So if the spirit is, let's say, less evolved, they might have a predisposition to drift towards alcohol and become alcoholics because that's how they were in their past incarnation. So maybe they have that predisposition, which is a negative because they haven't overcome that yet. But maybe if they're a little bit more evolved, then they overcame that. So then they have the instinct to not drink or avoid alcohol because they're already past that, and they don't care much about that. They don't have that that urge. So even though they have free will to do whatever they want, they're not going to drift towards that. So it all depends on how we were before. Question 846. Doesn't our organism have an influence on our actions in life? If so, isn't it at the expense of our free will? So our organisms, our body, doesn't it have an influence on how we act, how we can act in our lives? And if so, doesn't that doesn't it take away from our free will? So let's say people who are born and they're born without legs, or they're paralyzed and they can't move their body. So just because our bodies, like our physical bodies like that, doesn't it kind of take away our free will? Because okay, now that person doesn't have legs, they won't be able to walk and do things like other people might be able to. So doesn't that take away their freedom to act however they want? And the spirits answered, the spirit is certainly influenced by matter, which may hinder its manifestations. That is why, on worlds where bodies are less material than on Earth, the faculties develop with more freedom. However, the instrument does not give faculties to the spirit. Furthermore, in this case, it is necessary to distinguish between moral faculties and intellectual faculties. If individuals have an instinct for murder, it is assuredly their own spirit that possesses it, which transmits it to them. It never arises due to their bodily organs. Those who suppress their thoughts in order to occupy themselves with matter become like an animal, and even worse, since they no longer think about being on guard against evil. It is this that they become culpable, because they act in this manner of their own free will. So what they're saying here is, yeah, spirit's definitely affected by matter, but there's always a reason for it that's because of the spirit. So like they said here, if the spirit is kind of has this predisposition to murder, if they murdered before like a lot and they still haven't overcome that, then yeah, they might come in a condition where their body is paralyzed so that they can't they can't do that as much as their thoughts might want them to do that. We're kind of like their physical body's kind of restraining them and helping them to overcome that, because they can't act on that as much as they would like. And of course, it doesn't mean that this is just one example, like one case in a million, and each person is individual. So just because someone's paralyzed doesn't mean we're gonna say, oh, it's because of this or that. No, each case is different based on what that spirit's done, and there's a certain reason, but it's not the opposite. So it's not, oh, because this person is paralyzed, they have the tendency to do this and this and this. No, they already have that tendency, and that's why their body is the way their body is. And yes, that does maybe hinder their free will a little, but it's kind of to help them out so they don't actually act on the things they may be thinking. But the important thing to remember is that each person there is an individual person, an individual spirit who's gone through their own experiences. So everyone's different. So no two people are the same. So because one person might be going through it doesn't mean someone else is going through that same thing. So we have to keep that in mind and keep an open mind and realize that these people, no matter what, they're going through that because they need to overcome something. They need to help something. So again, like we said, we can't say, oh, here's Spiritism, read all about it and learn it and love it and live it. No, but we can show them by gentleness and kindness and explain bits and pieces and not force Spiritism on them, but just give them, oh, hey, I know this, I learned this. If you're interested in more, I can show you, and those kind of things. So that's where we'll leave off today. But before we leave off, I'd like to read our message from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations by Linda Picone for today's date, July 3rd. This one's titled, Laughing Together. Laughter is the shortest distance between two people. Make someone laugh, and we've made a friend. We're drawn to people who are amused by the same things that amuse us. It is a sign of other common interests and a similar outlook on life. I enjoy laughing with new people. It helps me get to know them. And before we leave off today, I'd just like to remind you all that our first International Youth Spiritist Weekend is happening this weekend in Washington, D.C., July 6th through 8th. And if you're registered and if you have any questions at all, please feel free to email me or to look up at www.cardiacreator.com. I'll be there all 3 days. I hope to meet some of you. And if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to talk about at all, feel free to email me at cardiacreatorforteens@gmail.com, and I'll go back to you right away. I'm Bia, and this has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.